Jai Bhim, Jai Mulnivasi, and welcome you all to MNT News Network's special primetime session of Sunday, where conversation of ideas may go beyond politics. Here we are normally discussing what actually is happening, many of the controversies, conspiracies around us. This week, the sharp focus has been on the resurgence of casteism. According to Human Rights Watch, India's caste system is perhaps the world's longest surviving social hierarchy. How relevant is the caste in 21st century of today's India and how it shouldn't be? What are the various ways, what are the various solutions in annihilating this caste system today? Joining with more on this, Dr. G. Mohan Gopal. He is basically a former director of National Judicial Academy, Supreme Court of India, and he is a leading voice on judicial reform and justice in India. Thank you and welcome you, sir, for joining today on this particular topic of resurgence of casteism. As of today, if we see that continuously in around 1925, one of the organizations like RSS came into field, and today it is very nearer of 2025, where almost centuries they are completing hundreds of years of their establishments. And today, even today, the age-old caste system is continued in its own form and in various ways. So, and this due to this the casteism issues itself, there are various atrocities and various things that are going ahead in the society. So this resurgence of casteism in means basically the last few years, the upsurge of this casteism. How this resurgence of casteism do you feel it is upsurging or it is resurging in today's scenario, sir? What do you feel?
Thank you very much, Ashish ji, for this opportunity. And I look forward to an interesting conversation with you on this very important topic. Thank you for having me. I think the fact that there is a resurgence of casteism in the country is not at all surprising. It is well known to everyone.
Right.
And we see it in a number of ways, in particular the rise of atrocities of various kinds across the country against especially scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and most backward communities, the reassertion of traditional practices along with the resurgence of tradition itself and the celebration of these very oppressive traditions which are responsible for casteism. We have seen, in addition to atrocities, we've seen a huge attack on reservations, unprecedented attack on reservations, where the constitutional framework for reservation has been considerably narrowed, and the ability to get reservation has been narrowed. There has also been a reduction of reservations in terms of through privatization and outsourcing, removal of large amounts of employment from the scope of reservation, so that actually no more than something like 4% of the employment of this country is covered by reservation. And if you take half of that, it's around 2% of the organized sector, which is a very, very small proportion of the employment opportunities required by the other backward castes and scheduled tribes. There is also a huge attack on civil society, the ability to mobilize, the ability to organize. Funding has been reduced. Prosecution is being launched against civil society for questioning the established order or questioning the casteist forces as it is being treated as sedition. And people are being prosecuted increasingly prominent people are being prosecuted. So we see digital exclusion increasing, and especially after COVID now, we have seen that there's been a rapid shift towards digital use of digital technologies, which has again marginalized the SCST community. And finally, there is a very systematic construction of a surveillance state and a lot of autocracy, where there's a lot of control being exercised over people's activities.
Right.
So we know that all this has been going on, particularly it started with the Congress government and the neoliberalization that it started in 1991, but it has accelerated with privatization and of the economy that has taken away opportunities for upward social mobility. And also the tremendous attack on natural resources from global demand and natural demand, and the pushing aside of especially scheduled tribe communities whose entire civilization is integrated with these natural resources. There's an unprecedented attack on them and violating constitutional rights. So we have the 85% of India is on the defensive. The upward social mobility opportunities are being reduced, and also poverty is being redefined so that it is almost as if they are told poverty is going down. Whereas when you ask people on the street, most of their experience is that actually their poverty is not going down. But according to the government figures and international organization figures, they have defined poverty in new ways so as to eliminate.
But sir, in one way, if we see, this is the one sort of the scenario that that is reflected or that is seen in the field. But on the other way, if we see after the implementation of Constitution in 1950, this basically this caste discrimination, it was under the fundamental right, it was told that it is unlawful, and even the untouchability should be abolished. Means everything is there, all articles are there, all the fundamental things are there to counter this and to make the objective of the constitution in such a way that this is all is not allowed. But still, after the principally, though it is under the fundamental right that this is not allowed, still why the earlier governments, or why this basically the government action that should be taken care that when it is banned under the Constitution of India, still why government are not taking this in particular direction, or till that why they are not taken, they are considered this as a fundamental right, and no provisions are being made to fulfill this basic objective of the Constitution under the fundamental rights. What can be the thinking behind this? Already there are provisions, but nothing has been done till so far.
See, we must not forget that the essential soul of the Constitution, which talks of democracy, liberty, equality, fraternity, for the instruments of universal adult franchise, where everyone has one vote for everyone, one person, one vote, and reservation as an instrument of social change. These provisions were put into the Constitution at the behest of and the insistence of, and through the great struggle of a small number of Dalit Bahujan members of the Constituent Assembly, who were led by Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar and his enormous skill and capacity. So you can say that these values are an assertion of the values of the masses of India.
Right.
These are not the values of the ruling classes.
Right.
And so the state is controlled still by the ruling classes. There is no reservation at the very top. As I said, reservation applies only to a very small number of opportunities in the state. Most of the top institutions are very much dominated by the same the socially dominant forces that that have dominated this country for a long time, in collaboration with rulers from the outside or locally. So the Constitution is an assertion of the values of the masses, and that is a great victory in itself. In most countries of the world, the Constitution is an assertion of the values of the ruling classes, and so people have to fight against the Constitution. Here, thanks to Baba Saheb Ambedkar and a number of other colleagues of his and supporters of his, The constitution is an assertion of the values of the common people, of the poor people of this country. And so naturally the elite will not accept it, will not own it, will not implement it. But it gives us, it has become a site of struggle where we have the tools and the opportunities to wage a peaceful constitutional struggle through which we can transform the state itself, the social character of the state and the ideology of the state based on the ideology of the constitution. So one of the great things about this, our country, is that we are fighting for the constitution, not against it. The poor are fighting for the constitution. One of the few countries in the world, because it has many provisions put there by Dr. Ambedkar and his colleagues that are our aspirations and our demands. And so that's a big victory. Now for us, the challenge is, how do we take this forward? How do we protect and defend the constitution? As I said in one of your earlier discussions, our challenge is to defend the constitution, defend constitutional institutions, and demand that these institutions must protect the constitution. So we have to protect, this is our constitution, we have to protect it. The ruling classes, the ruling castes, and the ruling forces will never protect it, because it talks about socialism, secularism, democracy, equality, fraternity, liberty, reservation, social justice, the equality not only between individuals but between groups, the distribution of the common resources of the community so as to best subserve the common good, a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all institutions of national life. And I can go on like this. The provisions of the constitution are almost like poetry. Poetry written by the common man as the poet, common person, common woman as the poet. So we must not be surprised that it is not being implemented. We must take on the responsibility, as we are doing. In fact, today, if the constitution is still holding strong in the country after more than 70 years, it is only because the common people of this country, particularly the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities, are jealously protecting the constitution, safeguarding, and they are the real shields of and protectors of the constitution. That is why nobody can dare to undo it or abandon it or overthrow it like it is done in other countries. So therefore, I think we must take it as a great asset and a great accomplishment that we have this constitution. We should not be surprised that it is not being implemented and that these institutions are not faithful to it. The people in the institution, sorry, not the institutions, the people in the constitutional institutions who are manning them are not faithful to it. And therefore, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to strengthen and defend our republic? I will say again, Ashishji, as I said before, that one of the most important words to me in the preamble, the very preamble to the Constitution, a very sacred charter, Magna Carta for us, 85 words. But one of the most interesting and important words there is, it says, "We the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India, Let's stop there. If you compare that, this was the final version of the Constitution as approved by the Constituent Assembly, drafted by the drafting committee chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The original version of this, which is in the statement of, with the objectives resolution of the Constituent Assembly, which was drafted in 1946 as the first document unanimously approved by the Constituent Assembly, which had many of the elements that are in the preamble, but it had this crucial difference. The crucial difference was that the statement, the objectives resolution of the Constituent Assembly said that it is the intention of the people of India to proclaim India as a sovereign democratic republic. The word proclaim, after 3 years of debate and and in the hands of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, finally emerged as constitute. Now, the word constitute means to create something new. To constitute something means to take something and create something new. Proclaim means to just declare something that already exists. So in 1946, the Constituent Assembly initially, the first resolution, talked of proclaiming an existing reality. But
Right.
after 3 years, unanimously, thanks to the intervention of Baba Saheb Ambedkar and the progressive group inside the small progressive group inside the Constituent Assembly, everyone unanimously realized that we are creating a new India, constituting a new country that never existed before. It's not a 5,000-year-old country. It's a country that was created in, came into existence in 1950 with this republic, as a sovereign, democratic republic. Word secular and socialist being added to it after that. It was always implicit in it. So we could say sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. So we must understand that we have created in this vast subcontinent with 1,300 million people, we are doing something unthinkable, which is we are trying to peacefully create a new country, a new nation as a republic, which never existed before. So that's why the preamble says, we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India, to create India, right? So naturally, it will take a long time. The ruling classes in this country that was extremely divided and oppressed in an autocratic manner for centuries, and ruled by rajas and monarchs, and we have only known monarchy, either colonial monarchy or local monarchy, till the republic, democratic republic, came into existence in 1950. Naturally, the ruling elites who had ruled us as monarchs or through monarchies for centuries are not going to, in 70 years, simply say, okay, fine, we will implement this constitution. So we have, the people of this country have been engaged in a massive struggle to protect the constitution. It is because of them that the constitution still remains strong. They will continue in that struggle. And so for us, it is an opportunity to recognize, pay tribute to these people who are protecting the constitution, and learn from them and reflect and share, their work and their struggle to take forward this constitution.
Right.
So, so my answer to you is yes. We don't expect this our constitution, we the
Right.
people's constitution, to be easily implemented.
Right. So this basically, as it is very clear that for the last 71 years of the implementation of the constitution, whosoever are the governing class or whosoever are coming in the power, basically they are of the mindset, or they are of the thinking that the supremacy of some particular class or some particular mindset peoples, that should remain and that should prevail for a longer time. And that may be the reason that they are continuously making such a system, or they are making such a policies that the basic development of the country or basic development of the structure should not happen in that particular way, so that their supremacy should be challenged. So, sir, that is the one way that the people who had the mindset that their supremacy, they will not compromise and they want to continue their supremacy, and that may be the reason that they had developed up one particular system for thousands of years, and they are continuing that system till today in one form or the other way. So that is one part. But on the other hand, basically now it is when it is known that this system, few people want to protect it for maintaining their supremacy. What can be done by other people, other part of the people whom we are calling as the majority of the people who are belonging to SC, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, or other backward classes or minorities, or the other sectors who are basically not benefited by this so-called system that has been developed by the to maintain the supremacy. So how these people, or what can be the various ways in front of these people to destroy or to take alternative plan or alternative actions against these systems, or to develop a new system or parallel system which can protect their rights, which are enshrined in the Constitution of India? What can be done? What should do?
Ashitji, I think we must, at some level, what is going on in our country is not different from what is going on in many parts of the world. Namely,
right,
let us accept the narrative of Mr. Savarkar. Let us accept his argument, or that a group of Aryans from northern, from around the North Pole, wherever, from somewhere, came here to this ancient land and decided to make this their home. Now this is now, they're confused about this because Savarkar said that they had come with their holy books from the North Pole. And later Golwalkar and others are trying to say, no, there was nobody came here. The North Pole, Golwalkar actually says the North Pole was somewhere where Bihar is today, and North Pole left. But actually, these people were always native here. Regardless, there is a narrative by them that a group of people came here, and from somewhere, wherever they came from, whenever they came from, it doesn't matter. And they've settled in this country. And this narrative is picked up in 1922 by a Privy Council judgment of the British Privy Council, four-judge bench judgment, in which the Privy Council notes that the entire framework of religious institutions, Hindu religious institutions established in our country, is intended to bring they use the word Dravidians under the Aryan religion. So we know that what is happening is a group of people come here. They brought their own religion, their own philosophy, their own belief systems. They encountered this vast and incredibly blessed subcontinent with amazing natural resources, amazing people, amazing culture. And then they decided that they want to rule and control this subcontinent. And this project is still continuing. And that project has been interrupted by various interventions from around the region and from Europe also, from various parts of Asia and from Europe. There were interventions to these people's, the project of these people, regardless of when they came, to try to rule this country by unifying the country around their beliefs and their systems. And for that purpose, a central tool they've used, Ashitji, is what we call the caste system, as a tool of colonization. According to me, it's a tool of colonization and settlement of our country, and we know that. And at the heart of it is this idea of a theology. So someone like Monier Williams, the famous Sanskritist, in his book Hinduism and Brahmanism, he distinguishes between three. He calls them religions. One is Vedism, second is Brahmanism, and third is Hinduism. So he describes Vedism as he says that he believes that these people came from what is today Tajikistan, which is very close physically to even the northernmost border of India. It's only maybe 500 kilometers away from the northernmost borders of our country.
Sure.
So wherever they came from, he acknowledges that they came, and initially they brought their prayers. They were coming to a new place, so they brought their prayers and their gods, and they started to pray to their gods, and that religion is what we call that ritual is what he calls Vedism. Right. It is around the practices of actually rituals and prayers to gods. Right. Then he says second phase is a new religion emerges from these people, which is he calls Brahmanism. Right. And Brahmanism is basically a theology, and so once they settle down, they came further down and they started to settle here. Then they developed a theology. Why did they develop a theology? Because they started to encounter local belief systems and local rituals and local practices. And I believe they also encountered Buddhism, because there are those who argue Buddhism was here. But now we are speculating. Whatever it is, we know they came here. They started with their own prayers. Then they started to develop a theology. Right. That theology is called Brahmanism. And why did they develop a theology? We don't know, we would speculate. But one of the reasons, typically a theology is developed in order to protect the system of ritual and prayer, because there is a challenge to it from some other types of religious practices that they've encountered. So they want to strengthen their religion against some kind of perceived threat. So Brahmanism could have arisen from the perception of a threat from Buddhism, or from local, very highly evolved indigenous religious beliefs and philosophies and cultures. And that Brahmanism includes, as you know, Yoga, Sankhya, it includes Vedanta, Upanishads, and all these things. It's basically a body of theological doctrine. Then Monier Williams says that then developed Hinduism started to deeply encounter new religions, including Christianity, Islam, the local religions of the indigenous people, the Mool Nivasi religions and philosophies and cultures. And then he argues that, frankly, everybody lost control. Nobody really controls it anymore. And he basically says something which Narayana Guru said 100 years ago, that Hinduism is not a religion. Narayana Guru recognizes the theologies of Brahmanism, the rituals of Vedism, but he says Hinduism was not a religion. He said there is no religion called Hinduism. Right. So Monier Williams also says the same thing, that the Hinduism is a completely, he has very, very negative words about Hinduism, saying it is totally disorganized set of social practices, confused beliefs, all kinds of, sort of, to use some kind of khichdi. He doesn't use that word, but a mixture of various social, political, religious. So actually, the EMS Namboodiripad, in his book on the Indian freedom struggle, actually argues that Hinduism emerged in order to justify Chaturvarnya and casteism, to defend it. So he would argue that it is not. He also takes a view it's not a religion, but it's simply a system. He says casteism is a system of slavery. Those are his words. EMS's words. And he says that to justify that system of slavery, this thing called Hinduism emerged. Hinduism emerged. So Hinduism becomes very complex, and we are today wrestling with this Hinduism. But we know that at the heart of this Hinduism, and the heart of the strategy to colonize and settle this country, is to impose on this country a system of Chaturvarnya. Right? And that is, what is Chaturvarnya? It is basically a system of classifying people, and assigning them roles, and rights and duties, right? And so it's basically a political system. It's of assigning roles, rights, and duties, and classifying people into 4 varnas, and then to impose. So once they came up with this Chaturvarnya, where they were put themselves, the Brahmin, Kshatriya, at the top of the order, as themselves as the top of this Chaturvarnya order,
so that they can control it.
So that they naturally gave themselves the highest order. It's their system. Right. So they said we are the highest, and then they created the 2 intermediary classes of Banya and Shudra, and then they ignored all the rest of us and said, then what to do with the rest of us was the question, right? So this initial group where they had only themselves, and then they had these 2 intermediate groups, which was a result of their exogamy, their intermarriage with local people and with a lot of local people they encountered, and so they became this more mixed Banya and Shudra groups, and maybe even some Kshatriya groups. The original theology was, the original people called themselves Brahmins, not that they were Brahmins, but they called themselves Aryans, they called themselves Brahmins. And the others who started, as Dr. Ambedkar says, there was exogamy, not endogamy. So there was, intermixing. So they categorized them as lower than them and gave them this. But there was a big issue. And that big issue was, how do they deal with these, they were encountering more and more very complex societies as they came into the subcontinent and came further south into the subcontinent, into the Indo-Gangetic plains, into the Deccan Plateau, and down into the peninsula. Right? So then they had this vast, masses of complex societies that they really could not understand. So they took this classification system and they added on to it. They added, one more level of classification, and that level of classification is called Jati. right? So we had Varna and now we have Jati. That's why in the Annihilation of Caste, Baba Sahib deals with both Varna and Jati, and he discusses it them because they're both Aryan systems actually.
Right, to suit them.
And the interesting thing is that in Kerala, for example, and to my knowledge in South India, there is no Dravidian word for Jati. It's a Sanskrit word. They say Kula, Sanskrit word. Samudayam, Samuham. So even in Tamil, they say Samugam. In Telugu and Kannada, they say Kula. In Malayalam, we say Jati. Because we do not have a Dravidian word for this second level of classification they have introduced.
Right.
And that second level of classification was introduced in order to control us. These masses beyond the four class, their own class, Brahmin, the three classes they created of people that they were working with, part of their system, and suddenly then the masses. And for the masses, they created Jati. Now, I'll give you a small example from Travancore, actual example, to explain how this works.
Right.
There was over centuries it has been going on, but it culminated in two censuses done in Travancore in 1881 and 1875. Both these censuses were done by a Telugu Brahmin called Mr. Nagamaya. Mr. Nagamaya's ancestors migrated from the Telugu-speaking areas into the Tamil-speaking areas some generations ago, and earlier. And then when Mr. Nagamaya was quite small, they migrated from the Tamil-speaking area to Travancore, where he went to school and he grew up. And when he was only in his 20s, he was appointed as the head of this, the director of census. He eventually became Diwan of Travancore. He was one of their very successful major functionaries, because the local rulers who are supposed to come from the Chola, the Tamil origin people, that is one explanation. They were in conflict with the local Brahmins and the local Nayars, and therefore they brought in a lot of outside, what they call foreign Brahmins, Telugu and Tamil Brahmins, to help them rule Kerala. Travancore. So Nagamaya did the census. In the census, he writes that he has encountered 377, roughly 400 subdivisions of people. Now, this is all he knew. In fact, there may have been many more than that. So Nagamaya says there are 377 subdivisions, and he then says that his intention is to consolidate these 377 subdivisions into 45 castes, into 45 jatis, castes. So he decides what these castes are. In many cases, he takes the local name and says, okay, this will be a consolidated caste. In other case, he creates a name. But in all these cases, he takes large number of local pre-existing subdivisions of people, social groups, and he forces them into these 45 castes. So even if you take today's Nayar community, what he did was he took a large number of subdivisions in Travancore, which had nothing to do with each other, no common occupation, nothing to do with each other. They would not even talk to each other. Some were very poor, some were very rich, some were educated, some were poor. By 1875, big inequalities. But some had the word Nayar in their name. He took all of them and consolidated them into one caste, which he called Malayali Shudra.
Okay.
So in a sense, he took some powerful people and he knocked them down. He said, okay, you're Shudra. Shudra, it is like I walk to a tree and tell the tree, you're coconut tree. The tree doesn't know it's a coconut tree. I am telling the tree, you're a coconut tree. And by saying that, I am creating a difference between that tree and the mango tree and the jackfruit tree and the eucalyptus tree that is around it in its own neighborhood. I'm creating a connection between this tree and a tree 1,000 miles away in Costa Rica, or 5,000 miles away in 10,000 miles away in Costa Rica, right? So by my classification system, I'm reordering the relationship, our recognition, human recognition of the relationship between what we see. Right. And so they come in and they say, okay, you are Malayali Shudra, right?
Right.
Now, and then, so they take this classification which they had done initially to the next level, and they classify the local people using jati, artificially consolidating them into consolidated jati. So exactly what happened in Travancore, it's on the record, and all the people who did it were Brahmins and Nayars, the officials. No one from any other community was involved. Just the Brahminical people were doing it. Now, he tells the census officers, if somebody gives you the name of a subdivision that you don't recognize, don't use it. Put them into a subdivision that you know. So people's basic identity were gone. In Kerala, we have other Dravidian names for the subdivisions, such as Tarawad, or Kudi. There are other local names which we identified subgroups and subdivisions. They were all disregarded, and these or they were put into only a Brahminically recognized caste system, jati system. Therefore, Narayana Guru, who was 3 years younger than Nagamaya and grew up in Trivandrum in the latter part of the 19th century, around this period, therefore, not surprisingly, told people, don't recognize jati. There is no jati. There is no religion, because now I am not quoting him, but he may have seen very likely that these Brahmins were creating these jatis in front of his eyes.
Right.
But he never said anything against the genuine local, organic social identities that people had, which were based on their relationship with each other and their relationship with the land.
Right.
And they were not instruments of political control. They were not instruments of exploitation or domination. They were just organic, like a family, an organic way of celebrating relationships with each other. And
Right.
people had lived in peace with that. They may have conflicted also around that, but those were identities of the blood and the soil.
Right.
The blood and the soil mixed. They were not political identities created to colonize people and control people. But jati was not like that. Jati was not like that. These consolidated jatis were created simply in order to colonize people. Now, I've a couple more things to say. So, the first thing is they colonized. They classified. And then they created jati system. Then they mapped the jati into the varna. And they mapped these jatis they created locally into one of the 4 varnas. This is the first step of their strategy for colonizing our country. One is classification. The second step, and the next 2 steps are simple. The next 2 steps, the second step, Ashit ji, is to create a narrative, a story about these subgroups.
Right.
A narrative, a false narrative, completely false narrative, or a distorted or exaggerated narrative. So if you take a large subgroup that was created, especially the subgroups that they wanted to exploit and they wanted to prevent their upliftment and continue to use as a slave class,
Right.
Exploiting their labor and taking away their natural resources. Such communities were given very, very negative and very narrow stories and narratives. So a community was told, for example, that you are toddy tappers. Right? Right. Actually, very few people in that community ever did toddy tapping. Even those who did toddy tapping did multiple jobs. They can't just live off toddy tapping. But that was picked. And an entire community was told, you're toddy tappers, although they have nothing to do with it. Another community was told, you're manual scavenger. Another community was told, you're fishermen, you're safai karamchari. So although they were at that time at the bottom of the pyramid, all of these communities did multiple jobs and multiple tasks. This ability to say multiple stories about ourselves is only available at the top. So Jawaharlal Nehru is a prime minister, political leader, yoga expert, author, intellectual, wonderful human being, so many things, Brahmin, and Orientalist, highly educated. So many stories. So when you go to the top, you have multiple stories about people. So it permits a Brahmin to run a stationery shop outside, or a hotel, Iyengar hotel. But no one will think that his community's business is to run a hotel. even though he has run that for 10 generations. But if you have a scheduled caste running a hotel, then people will say, "Oh my God, you should not run a hotel." You're
because it is not defined. They had defined
because they have defined the suppressed people very narrowly and very negatively, very negatively. So they constructed these wrong narratives about social groups. So step one was classification, creating a classification system. Step two was constructing a very carefully constructed negative narrative about the masses, and a very, very wonderful, glorious, but equally false positive narrative about themselves and the privileged subgroups. They are Brahmagyanis, they are scholars, they are great people. So they can do anything, but they have these multiple, wonderful narratives. So second point was to create false narratives, all of them false. The third, although some of them may have had a grain of truth, the third and the last component of the system of Aryan system of colonization of this country, Aryan according to Savarkar, is that they then connected this to a superstition about rebirth. So they connected the current life to the previous life and the next life, as you know, through the karma theory, through the theory of Atma, Punarjanma, Purusha Sukta, right? And they created a religious justification for why this group of people are today only manual scavengers, and they are suffering because they have poor atmas, poor quality atmas, because they did dush karma in their last birth. So God has, given them poor merit. What is merit according to Brahminical merit? Is only three things: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Which gunas do you have? That is their only concept of merit. And how do you get these gunas? By an unverifiable acts in an unverifiable previous birth or births. So you have come with sattvic guna, therefore you get privilege and wealth and power. You have come from a previous birth with dushkarma and tamasic guna, and therefore you have to do the menial labor, and you will not be paid anything. You may be even not given anything to eat, because your suffering is your liberation. Your exploitation is your liberation. So this superstition was built. So they created a classification, they created a story, and that story was used for exploitation, and then they created a superstition link based on God and religion to justify the story, the narrative, and the exploitation. Now, in my view, Ashish ji, this system of stories based on superstition is caste.
Right.
Caste is basically a system of false stories. Now, what has happened is these very Brahminical people have told the world that actually caste is a system of division of labor, specialization of labor, based on actual occupation of people that they chose to do. Whereas in fact what happens is, I know an actual a group of people who are priests in a particular community, priests of that community. That community was put into a pariah community. Okay? The label pariah by Nagamaya, in that classification, they were put into pariah. Now, and then the pariah was given a story that you are manual scavengers and in the lowest unskilled labor, right? You do only dirty work. Then once you do that, then suddenly these people that I personally know, they could not be priests anymore, even in their own community, because of the story. Even their own community will turn to somebody else to be priests. Even in their own homes, they are not being priests, because the stories are so powerful that people believe these stories, and then the story becomes a reality.
Right.
So it was not as if that these were manual scavengers and then suddenly they were classified into a caste. No, these were normal people living normal lives with a variety of jobs and variety of functions, equally glorious, equally dignified, no different from the Brahmin or the Baniya or the invaders or whatever you want to call them, the people who came to colonize them. But suddenly you classified them. You gave them a negative story. You spread that story gradually over decades and centuries. People said you cannot do anything else except that story. And so their occupation became narrowed down. So
right.
then,
If generation to generation it is continued, the same type of thinking is coming up. Yeah.
Because of the story, because of the
Yes.
power of the story. So
Yes.
that's why you'll find that in this culture of the Aryan, stories are very important. Ramayana,
Right.
Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita. Their biggest weapon is story, not bullet,
Yes. Right.
not lathi.
And that
It's a
is why I
story.
think today also this means whatever it was thought thousands of years, still they are able to maintain and continue the same thinking, same philosophy, same line of way of living a life is continued generation to generation till today also. We are seeing that it is continued in the same fashion, same way, and same thoughts are continued in next generations.
Yeah,
So basically, yeah,
because of
yeah,
the essence of caste, of their strategy of colonization,
right,
is to make stories and narratives.
right,
Now, there is
right,
a field called narrative psychology. And this is well recognized that narratives are extremely important
right,
for humans. We all have narratives about ourselves. We have narratives about our family. We have narratives about our immediate community, our locality, our geography, our state, our country, our world, about humanity, right? So narrative psychology is a very important field that recognizes the power and central importance of narratives, because it is through narratives that we learn to adjust ourselves to the real. We learn about the world and our role in it and how to live in it, right? So what this caste does is it comes in. It's like a virus.
right,
It comes and corrupts your own story about yourself, creates a false story, and then spreads that false story, and that false story then starts to define you. Now, these stories about caste are what in narrative psychology is called master narratives. Master narratives.
right,
These are not like narratives about myself, but it's like narratives about my caste or India. These are master narratives about
right,
my religion. And we are forced to live within these narratives and adjust to them. If not, we become socially misfits. And so when they create these master narratives, they're changing society.
right,
Therefore, my main point, Ashish ji, is what I was saying is, they say caste is a system of division of labor. They say there is nothing inherently wrong in a system of division of labor and specialization. This has been done by different people all over the world. It is also going on in modern times. The system of, they say wrongly, falsely, that the system of specialization got, in a sense, corrupted by
right,
practices such as endogamy, by untouchability, discrimination. But there's nothing wrong with the fundamentals of caste, because it is only a system of division of labor. And therefore, caste retains a respectability that you can cure it, you can fix it, take away the hierarchy, take away the discrimination, the untouchability, and make it more open, let people do whatever they want, don't have hierarchy. Then it's a fine system. Chaturvarnya is a fine system because it's a logical, rational, modern system. This is very wrong. This is very wrong. Why is it wrong? Because if this was true, as Karl Marx predicted, when industrialization happened and railways came, he said caste would end in India. But industrialization has come, the trains have come, the trains have gone, but caste is still here. It did not get on the train. It is still here, right? So we've seen that this explanation of caste cannot be true, because caste has not been weakened by the transformation from feudal agricultural mode of production to industrial mode of production. It has not been weakened by technology. It has not weakened by globalization. In fact, it has now gone global, because caste has been taken by upper caste Hindus from here to other countries. Those countries are now having to change their legislation to recognize caste discrimination in countries which are at the cutting edge of technology, which means it has nothing to do with the feudal system. It has nothing to do with the Indian geography. It has nothing to do with agricultural modes of production. It is something else. So the theory that caste is a system of mode of production is wrong. It cannot explain what it is. Therefore, we have to discard it. We have to discard it. So therefore, we have to understand it for what it is. It is a set of master narratives created to destroy some people and inflate some people. and to justify exploitation of people. The narratives justify exploitation. Gender is another kind of narrative, race is another kind of narrative, and these are all narratives created to exploit people, right? So caste is a narrative created to exploit people based on superstition. Religious superstition gives it a lot of power. But once we understand caste as a narrative, then we understand why. This is the last part of what I want to say before you intervene. We understand why in some parts of India, like with the intervention of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, with the intervention of Narayana Guru, with the intervention of Periyar, the original strength of the caste system has been weakened, right? And that is because they developed a counter narrative to caste. They saw caste as a narrative. They did not say, let us change the technology of production and caste will disappear. They came up with a new narrative. So Dr. Ambedkar came up with a completely new narrative about caste and Varna and Jati. And once he came up with that, and from his work emerged the narratives of understanding the society as divided between Manuvadi and Bahujan, or Mool Nivasi and Manuvadi. Suddenly we started to understand caste in a much better way, and social change really provided a new way of understanding our society, and we saw caste for what it really was. When you say that caste is a system, is a story, is a narrative about who we are, and we should discard that narrative, and we should adopt a new narrative, that there is a Mool Nivasi and there is a Manuvadi, there is a Bahujan and there is a Manuvadi. Then it's a new narrative about our society, not a narrative based upon Jati and Varna, right? And which basically is hierarchical, and which creates wrong stories about a lot of, it creates a classification system and wrong stories, and links it to religion, links it to previous birth and past birth. So when the Ambedkarite movement brought in a new narrative, saying that this is not a new classification system, nothing to do with Varna or Jati, but it has the distinction between Mool Nivasi and Bahujan and Manuvadi, right? And then explain that this has no connection. This has no connection with the previous birth. It is unconnected to, and that there is no negative narrative attached to it. In fact, there was a positive narrative attached to it.
Exactly.
Similarly, Narayana Guru rejected Jati completely and Varna completely. And he said, look, there is only one narrative, and that is we are all human beings, right? So he also rejected that narrative. Periyar rejected the narrative completely, and he rejected the whole version of and he brought in the whole Dravidian Aryan narrative, and he brought. So we saw that when we did not accept the Brahminical idea that caste is simply a system of division of labor, right? It's a system of division of labor, but it is actually a set of narratives about human beings, a false narrative about human beings. That it is simply a system that has been created falsely, a completely false set of narratives about us. As I said, a narrative that has been created, which takes away, which is entirely false. And so once that narrative was rejected, then we have started to see the south of India very positive change, because these narratives were rejected. So we must understand actually this caste system as basically a set of a set of false narratives, which has been created.
Basically, it is a sort of a system developed to retain the supremacy of few people who as you said, they came from all together from other country for business or for other objectives, and that they settled here, and they when they saw that here there are much more resources which they can utilize it for their own purpose, and they can maintain their supremacy with some sort of developing some system, and that they continued, and all our forefathers basically they counter this entire system, and they had right from Buddha to all our forefathers, they had given the different perspective of humanity or humankind. So basically, they are continuously trying to thrive this system, and to maintain this supremacy, and to maintain this casteism or this process of way of living the life. So this is one part, sir. Now we are running short of time, but still, I would like to know how this resurgence of casteisms can be countered. What can be the various ways? Why we are not able to counter this system basically, and still even in 1935, whatever Dr. Bambasaheb Ambedkar told about annihilating this system of caste in his speech delivered at Lahore. Whatever the various ways he also had proclaimed, or he also had said towards this annihilating this caste or countering this resurgence of caste. From your view, what you can say, how it can be countered, or how it can be means controlled. Though we have a tool of constitution as one way, but still, what are the various ways of annihilating this caste, or getting back dignity of our whole self-respect movement of our old, because as you told, our history is very strong, and our history was not as it is told today. So how to get back this history, or how to counter this caste system and gain in current days, in coming days, so that means a parallel way of thinking can propagate. What do you think, sir?
Yes, so basically, what we must understand that caste is actually not a system of division of labor. It's not a system of division of labor. It is a set of false stories made by it, a system to classify people and then make false stories about them, right? And those stories either give power or take away power from you. So the first thing we have to do is to completely dismiss caste as simply a set of false stories about social groups based on superstition, and casteism is a belief in these stories, regardless of what our location in society is. If we believe in these stories about so jati and varna, which is created by the Aryans who came here to who want to establish their domination over this country. We have to understand it for what it is. So then the question is, how do we move forward? That's where the Constitution of India provides us a very powerful framework, and that powerful framework is to recognize, as Dr. Ambedkar said, Narayana Guru said, Periyar said, a number of these visionaries said, that we are basically human beings. We are all human beings, and we don't believe in these false stories. We take a scientific attitude, and it's like Narayana Guru asserted. He said, "Look, do you see that I'm a human being? And can you see? You tell me my caste by looking at me when a man could not do it." He said, "Can you see I'm a human being?" He said, "Yes." So that's the only truth, and there is only one humanity, and we must believe in that. So the first thing we have to do is to annihilate, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar said, annihilate caste as basically a false narrative. Caste is a false narrative. It is not a system of organization of labor. It is a false narrative about people. It is, and so that false narrative has to be, the falseness has to be exposed, and we have to understand that we start life as the Constitution says, as equal human beings, and once we accept that, then as Dr. Ambedkar said, that is the annihilation of caste. The annihilation of caste is the destruction in the belief that it is a system with any validity. It has to be totally rejected as a complete as a complete lie that has been created, and a superstition and complete irrational. So what we have to do going forward, I think, is to as the doctor take forward the agenda of annihilation of caste, and that Dr. Ambedkar and other social reformers, including Narayana Guru and others, have laid down, and make sure that at least the Mool Nivasi people understand clearly the nature of this thing called caste, that it is actually a entirely false narrative created deliberately about us by people who want to dominate and colonize us. So once that becomes clear, I think then our democracy will open up. Our democracy will open up when we start to see each other as simply human beings. That's what we are. That's a biological truth, that we are all human beings. And the basis of this Constitution of India is that we are all equal. We are born equal, and we are not born with any purva janma karma phala and punar janma. All this we must. I think those of us who are working on this must take responsibility. And I tell people to say, you believe whatever else you want, but please don't believe that in this theory of karma and rebirth and rebirth with punarjanma, with purva janma karma phala, because it means that you're looking at your own child and you're thinking that this child has been born into my, if you are from a avarna or a category, then you're looking at the child, and you should never believe that that child is anything but the most beautiful expression of the greatness of nature. And you should not believe the nonsense that the child is some duratma reborn as a avarna because of some purva janma karma phala, and all this nonsense has been created. It's a complete lie, and it's a set of false stories. So first we must, I think, deal with that. Now this is where I think, unfortunately, we are the progressive forces, upper caste progressive forces, are not dealing with this false belief system that has been built up in this country and destroying it. The annihilation of caste, as Baba Sahib said, is the annihilation of this false belief in this narrative about certain people, both the positive narrative and the negative narrative, which has no basis in truth. So once that happens, which is what our Constitution demands, then I think a lot of possibilities will open up. And we will start to see each other as human beings, Right? And then we will start to build our own future as a people. That's what the Constitution of India tries to do, which is basically a Varna Virodhi document. It is a document that does not accept Varna and does not accept these divisions of Jati and Varna. They're all part of the same attempt to colonize this country through these kind of social divisions. And we must be united as a people, and the Constitution has that vision. So therefore, in the name, now how do we do this? This is where we have to understand that we must have solidarity around an understanding of our mind about the falsity of these divisions, that we are all just human beings, right? as Baba Sahib said, and Narayana Guru said, and Periyar said, that we are just human beings. We are Homo sapiens, right? That's a simple, plain truth. All with enormous capacity and enormous potential. And unless we harness all this potential, India cannot run only on when India has, 1,300 million, 130 crores of engines. India cannot run only on half a dozen engines, and all the other engines are shut down. We cannot move forward. So we have to we have to change this understanding, and then unleash the potential for us to go beyond this this false belief, this entirely false narrative that has been created around caste. So I think that is the main message. So how do we counter the resurgence of caste? We must understand what it really is.
Right.
And
once every human is treating other human as a human, then definitely there the humanity and the brotherhoodness and whatever our constitution is founded on, that basically it starts from the every individual. Because if every individual is thinking in this particular direction, that I should treat every other human as a human, then only the humanity will get start, and everybody will be look into proper perspective of looking at this equality, liberty, and then fraternity. All these basic principles will basically come into picture, and whatever the basic thinking was there, Dr. Ambedkar, for analytic. So I think, sir, we are really, toward the end of the session, and I'm really thankful to you for giving your valuable time today for this particular topic on resurgence of countering the resurgence of the casteism. And definitely our viewers, I think they had got the basic information that was needed on this particular topic, and they definitely will take it forward, and they will understand how to counter this casteism, which is more it is the basis of which is hindering the development of the nation also, because that is directly related with the development of the nation. So I think it was a great time, and it was a great discussion today with you on this particular topic. And on behalf of MNT News Network, I would like to thank you very much for giving your valuable time today for this particular session. And I hope that in future further discussions also, we would like to invite you on various different topics, and we will again discuss on different topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And can I just say two words?
Sure.
In conclusion, I just want to say that what we can do as individuals is completely to de-recognize, as Dr. Ambedkar, Periyar, and Narayana Guru, and various others have said, de-recognize this false framework of both Varna and Jati, Varna and Jati. Sure. And adopt an alternate framework to understand society. There are many alternate frameworks available to us. We have the Mool Nivasi framework that Kanshiramji and others have developed based on Dr. Ambedkar's ideology. We have the broad humanitarian approach that Narayana Guru developed and Periyar also developed. And so we must just de-recognize this Jati and Varna system completely. And we can go back to our own indigenous, non-exploitative local identities. That's not a problem. But the Jati and Varna has been developed in order to divide us and weaken us. So I think we have a lot of options to us from the work of our visionary social reformers like Baba Sahib and Periyar and Narayana Guru, and we should learn from that and take that forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you, Ashilji.
Thank you very much, sir, once again, and really thank you very much for giving your valuable time. Hope to see you again on some different topics, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. So it was a nice discussion today, and I hope that today's video, it will be live in YouTube and Facebook. So all the viewers are requested to send this information to in their friend circle, in their social network, so that maximum people can get the information of this on this particular topic, which is very very essential topic to know how to counter and to how to think in particular direction, so that every individual and every person can think in the humanity point of view. And definitely once we start thinking in humanitarian direction, the development of the individual and the development of the society and the development of the country will take place. Thank you once again for watching this live session, and hope we will again connect you tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. On the Hindi prime time discussion, which we are organizing regularly. Thank you very much. Jai Bhim, Jai Mulwasi.